guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm back with another bullet journal evolutions video, and I wanted to focus today on the collections that I keep in the front of my bullet journals. So the collections in the front of my bullet journal have stayed largely the same, but there have been some pretty significant changes in a few aspects, and I thought it might be interesting to show you guys kind of a comparison of the sorts of things that I kept in my bullet journal when I first started and the kinds of things that I am currently going to keep in my newest bullet journal, which is my 5th. So let's get started. Oh gosh, I have a lot of notebooks. This is all 5 of my bullet journals, so move those off to the side. So let's look first at my first bullet journal. This was from April 2016 to July 2016, and since it was my first, I kind of went a little crazy. I wanted to try every single tip I saw online. I wanted to try all of the different collections, and to be honest, I went a little bit overboard. So you can see here that I had the flip out inspired by Boho Berry. I did lettering. I had lettering here, which let me tell you, don't use this page. It's completely useless. Also, this was like my first lettering thing. I'm gonna have to do a lettering evolution, but like rough, real rough. I had the key, I had my timeline. I've always used my index, but you know, I had like doodles and all that kind of stuff here. And this, I actually highlighted collections that I wanted to be able to refer to easily, and I have an archive collection in my collection bullet journal so that I can flip there and see where different collections are in previous bullet journals. So I had my year at a glance. So this is something that I've kept in all of my journals. I had my year at a glance. I had quotes and doodles, Calendex and future log. So this is one of those things that is very similar from bullet journal to bullet journal for me. And what I thought I would do is, let's actually go ahead. I'm going to show you sort of in each bullet journal as I go through how things were set up and how some things stayed exactly the same and how some things changed. So let's start with the first page here. So in my second bullet journal, I had the official bullet journal, which means that I had the key already here. And I just covered up the bottom section with this little lettering I did because I didn't end up needing all of that space. That's one thing that you will see here. So let's flip to my key, is that I seriously simplified my key. I really don't use a crazy key. I just use the task box, which I do dots now. I do the partially done with 1/, completed with an X. I do the migrated or scheduled. I do the urgent. I do notes, and I do events. And that is really it. I don't really use any of these other things that I had down here. I don't use a timeline anymore. I do have a color code for my Calendex, but I don't use a timeline. In my third bullet journal, I went even simpler and I just taped a postcard in here. This is a postcard of a town I went to in France. Like, really simple. In my fourth, whoops, I didn't do anything. I have a sticky note for open collections and the rest is blank. And that brings us up to the new bullet journal that I will be in September. I have not decided if I'm going to do anything here, so it is currently just pretty blank. All right, so then next up, I'm not going to go ahead and show you my index. I actually didn't do a key. Let's see, do I have a key in here? Nope, see, I didn't even do a key. After my first one, and after the key that came with the official bullet journal, I realized that I didn't need it because I have such a simple key that I just remember it. So I stopped doing a key in the front of my bullet journal. So we're gonna skip through the index because that's not very interesting. So I did do a year at a glance. Let's see if I can fit a couple. So I did a year at a glance in each of my bullet journals. So this one was from August through November, and I ended up doing a partial 2016-2017 calendar. In my third one, I did a full 2017 calendar. So you'll see that the biggest change I have is the style. So the style for lettering and all of that kind of setup. In my current one, same thing. just a 2017 calendar, no big change, and my, let's see, and my new bullet journal. So I definitely simplified. I don't write in year at a glance. I don't need it. I know what it is. So that has definitely changed in a more like simplified way. The next thing I have is my Calendex and future log. So when I first started, I had a 4-month Calendex and a 3-month future log. And I ended up using that for a little while. So I have, I did change my color coding a tiny bit, but otherwise the future log is pretty much the same. Let's see. Then in my third bullet journal, I realized that it made a lot more sense for me to have a 4-month Calendex and a 4-month future log because I was getting 4 months in every journal. So that meant that I had a Calendex for all of the months that were like active in my current journal, and I had a future log for anything that was going to be in my next bullet journal. And that gave me an 8-month overview, and usually that was sufficient. So that was one of the biggest changes I made there, and it's something that I kept into my new bullet journal. Now, this particular bullet journal, I actually got 5 months. So August is in this journal. However, when I was thinking about it and going through for my new one, I decided that I was going to take a gamble and just go ahead and do it the same way as I did before and have 4 months and 4 months. So the other big thing that you'll notice is in my first 3 bullet journals, oops, let's see if I can get them all in camera. My first 3 bullet journals, I was using the Staedtler Tri Plus fine liners for my color code. And then in my 4th bullet journal, I switched to a more pastel Tombow color coding system. And just today, I have actually decided I wanted to change it up again and do different colors so that I can use different Tombows. So I have an even more neutral, still kind of pastel Tombow color code, and I'm rubbing this because I glued a new piece of paper in because I had originally just kept the same color code, and I decided literally today, so I had already set this up, that I wanted to change it. So I just need to cover it up and start fresh. So, oops, next up, in my first bullet journal, I had my long-term tasks, my work tasks, personal and professional goals, and in my second, I actually just combined all of these basically into one big goal section that was for work, university, life, and home. In my third bullet journal, I kept that same 4-sectioned goal setup. But in my 4th bullet journal, I switched over because I started doing the 52 goals in 52 weeks in January, and I decided it made more sense to actually pull the goals that I was working on from that goal challenge rather than just kind of arbitrarily having goals in these sections. So I started doing that, and I have also done that for my new bullet journal. I pulled any of the goals that I haven't yet finished from my current goal challenge. So that was definitely a change over time. In terms of the money stuff I keep in here, so you guys, I've covered this pretty much because I've done several videos on my financial tracker, on budgeting and all that kind of stuff, so I've just covered the numbers. But I started out doing my financial tracker with all of the components that you guys know, expenses, bills, like all that kind of stuff, but I also had a savings goal page. And I actually kept it in my second bullet journal, but I never used the savings goals. I never filled this in. And so after that, I just stuck to a 1-page financial spread, and I have kept it the same ever since. So this one is not yet filled in, so you can see this is what my spread actually looks like. I like to have the 4 months that I plan to have in this journal, and then expenses, bills, and anything that is pending or owed. So that one stayed pretty much the same. I do savings goals, I just don't keep them in here. I use YNAB, so I tend to keep them in there. The other thing that I have, and I'm not even going to show you in my other bullet journals because I don't have them, was I started out having books. So I had classics, fiction, nonfiction, I did movies and TV shows. And yep, that was the end. So I had a lot of media, and this was one of those things that I moved very quickly into my collection bullet journal. So this is not even in any of my other bullet journals. It was only in the first one. But the next thing I have is my wish list and bucket list. So I ended up moving the bucket list into my collection bullet journal, but I do keep a wish list in my bullet journals. So let's see. So I have my wish list here. Got my wish list in this guy, my current wish list, and my new wish list. So whenever I migrate, I try to kind of go through and see if there's anything that I don't need to migrate. So that's why this list is shorter than this one. It's not, even with the things that I bought, I still took off some things from this list. So the other thing that, oops. So that was actually the end of this particular front of bullet journal section. And so now going into my next one, so this is my second bullet journal, you'll notice that in addition to the wish list, I also have my reading challenge. So I actually had the first iteration of this spread later on in my first bullet journal, but when I moved into my second one, I went ahead and I made a spread at the front of this journal so that I could keep it more easily. But after, I actually no longer had it in the front. It was only in my second bullet journal because for 2017, so this actually took me through November, for 2017, I actually went ahead and I moved this entire spread into my collection bullet journal so that I would have it for the entire year and I wouldn't have to keep rewriting it. Okay. So the other big change I made in my third bullet journal was I started doing, next to my wish list, I started doing an espresso tracker and a waiting on tracker. So I have kept that for the last two, and I have it also in my new bullet journal. I've just changed it to waiting for rather than waiting on. I don't really know why, I just did. The next thing that I have is I started doing a tracker for Sunshine and Stationery. This was in August, so I actually sort of back did a couple of my things. So I've got a tracker in my first bullet journal, it's just not at the front. So I had originally ideas for things to post. I had my tracker and then certain memories. And as I went through, I kept the ideas, but I dropped the memories because I found I was doing them in the memory spreads in my monthly, and so I didn't really need them in a separate place. So I just gave myself more room for the tracker. And let's see, do I have, oops, nope. So with this one, I actually ended up doing an overflow spread over here. And I have this, so both of these actually ended up getting moved to my collection bullet journal. So I'd had my overflow there, and then in here, I left myself space for overflow and I didn't end up needing it, so I turned it into an alphabet page. And then in my new one, I have Instagram and I also have YouTube. So I had a space for ideas and things to do, which I think I've actually got. Yep. So this is actually my third bullet journal. That was around the time that I started my YouTube channel. So I had things to do, things to get, things to research, and different ideas, plus a tracker. And so I actually just condensed it all in my fourth bullet journal because I was keeping more ideas in another place. So I didn't want to have as much space here. I wanted to have them kind of planned in a different area. And I am going to keep that same thing here, but I'm even going further. I'm taking out the ideas and the do, and I will just have trackers right here. Now, in addition to the trackers in this fifth bullet journal, I will be adding a YouTube mind map, which I do have in my fourth bullet journal. It's just not in the front section. And I will be adding a YouTube editorial calendar for things that I would like to film in the future. So let's go back. So second bullet journal, this was when I was leaving extra pages in the front for collections because of how I was setting up my bullet journal. I wanted it more structured. And so I left a couple of pages. So the things that ended up going in this front section were two different travel spreads. And I had the first iteration of my cleaning tracker, which is now currently in my home bullet journal. So that was the front of my second bullet journal. So going back to bullet journal number 3, I already showed you guys the overflow in the tracker. And I ended up having this extra spread that I really didn't use, so I did art on it. So that was how that one went. But in my fourth bullet journal, I stopped leaving extra pages in the front. So after my trackers, I actually just went directly into my monthlies. Now, with my new bullet journal, I also have decided to add, in my fourth bullet journal, I added in my library loans, and I decided I wanted to have one in the front of my bullet journal. I know that I will need to make a new one in the future, but I wanted to have it up here just to start off. And then I also have a Christmas spread because I think I will get December in this bullet journal, so it'll be nice to have this if I end up going back to visit my parents and my family for Christmas. And then it goes into my monthly. So as you can see, honestly, a lot of my spreads have stayed the same. The biggest thing was, you know, how many pages I left for certain things, and taking any of my media spreads from my first bullet journal, taking them and moving them into a collection bullet journal. But to be perfectly honest, once I've found spreads that work for me, I tend to keep them until they no longer work. So in the future, you know, I might tweak my financial spread, or I might not do a tracker spread, or I'm not really sure what, but at least for the time being, while they are working and they are useful for me, I really just keep the same things. And you'll have seen in my newest bullet journal, I have added a couple of things, and who knows, you know, they might last for one bullet journal. They might be something I do for several. It really just kind of depends once I see how things actually work out once I test them in a bullet journal. So if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know down in the comments section. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and or subscribing to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!